Hey, today, June 1st, start of hurricane season. It's also a great reminder to get prepared if a storm does head our way. KPRC 2 meteorologist Anthony Yanez spoke with hurricane specialist Robbie Berg about the future of hurricanes and your part in staying safe.
You know, I really think the future is getting people to understand their risks. We can make a perfect forecast, but people don't often know what to do with that perfect forecast. They don't know if they live in a flood zone. They don't know if they're immune or prone to storm surge. And so it's not just the physical science we're worried about, but it's also the social sciences, making sure that people understand what to do with that forecast when it's given to them.
All right. See, I was listening, also admiring the hairstyle, though, if I'm being honest. Now, we know this place, Houston area, not a stranger to big storms. How do you know if you're in a flood zone? That's one question for Anthony and Caroline. They're going to help you out with that and more. Good morning.
We've got a lot of stuff to talk about. And of course, Owen, you know my philosophy on whether we're a flood zone. All of Southeast Texas is a flood zone. I need to bring in my picture. There was a topography that was done in the late 1800s of Southeast Texas, and it shows the floodplain, and it's all of Southeast Texas.
All of Southeast Texas, but also a lot of our neighborhoods. It doesn't take too much to have a flood day. Even the last few days, we've seen those local streets fill up. It only takes a few inches of rainfall.
And I know Owen and I talk a lot about, there are areas that are more at risk, obviously, some places that are closer to the bayou and whatnot, and so there are higher chances for others. But honestly, that's why I always say all of us need flood insurance. Caroline and I are going to go through a couple of graphics for you already, and we don't want to repeat this because we just talked about it, but we're tracking an area in the Gulf of Mexico. Did you know that this is the second year in a row we did not get a May storm? We went 7 years in a row getting a May named storm. We didn't this year, we didn't last year, and the forecast is for an average number of storms this year. But of course, that message really needs to be stated as far as its average, but that's not going by what's impact.
Not going by impact. And it's also important to remember, this is not a landfall forecast. We could have 14 named storms and none of them could make landfall. So it only takes one storm. But this is going to be the official forecast that they've put out. The average number would be 14 named storms, 7 of which become hurricanes and 3 become major. And Anthony, this year, the forecast from NOAA, it really fits into that range.
Right. And you have Colorado State actually below average. And last year, going with what you said, 2 of these storms, one of them, the major hurricanes, was Ian, and that hit Florida.
Exactly.
West Florida. And so there are areas there. To them, that was a crazy busy hurricane season because some people are still trying to recover from this from last year, which, as you can see, was a fairly normal season. So why don't we have you go over El Nino is one of the reasons why we're expecting an average number of storms to form. So we have this.
So El Nino, I want to start by talking about what it is. We have weaker trade winds this year. So that means instead of having the warmest water in the Pacific near Asia, we actually have it off the coast of South America. So we have warm water here. That's going to heat the air above it. You've got warm rising air, and this is actually going to lead to an increased wind speed pushing into the Caribbean. And Anthony, this is not good for tropical development.
No, but it is good if you don't like a lot of storms out here in the Gulf of Mexico.
We like this.
Caribbean. Yes, we like this. And the reason is, do you see where the arrows are? You have these storms that develop and they go from the east to the west or go into the Gulf of Mexico. But what you now have is an opposing wind, and that really either weakens the storm or completely prevents it from forming in the first place, that high wind shear.
Absolutely. This is going to really help suppress any tropical development for weaker storms. But if we already have a strong storm, this might not impact it quite as much. And we certainly have the possibility for that. We've been seeing rapid intensification happen more and more in recent years.
We're already seeing it, the system near Florida. It went from a 20% chance to where the discussion was it's not organized, it's disorganized. And all of a sudden it's got a 50% chance of becoming Arlene, our first named storm. My concern, by the way, is you see how warm these temperatures are near the coastline. If you get a storm like this one that forms close to land, wind shear doesn't have much of an impact because it can rapidly intensify, and then you basically have less than 3 days to prepare because you're having a storm that's rapidly intensifying and moving toward land. And so the wind shear is really not affecting it. It's affecting like these storms, but the ones close to land, a different issue.
Yeah, that's going to be a concern. With those warm surface temperatures on the water, we can see these systems quickly intensify. So that's why we're thinking an average season.
Yeah.
El Nino and the surface temperatures kind of balance out.
I thought this was kind of interesting. By the way, there might be a below average season. The last time we had a below average season, 3 years in a row, 2013, 2014, 2015, nearly 10 years or 10 years ago. But of course, you were mentioning the forecast isn't for impact. Ian last year. It only takes one storm to completely change everything. I think the name is interesting, especially when you look at Harold.
Harold? Why is Harold your favorite one?
Well, it's not my favorite one, but 6 years ago, we had Harvey. And so Harvey, of course, was retired. Maria, also the one that really affected Puerto Rico, devastated the entire area. That gets replaced by Margot. And then you have Adelia. Is it Adelia or how do you pronounce that?
We will let you know.
I think it's Adelia, but they have the pronunciations, and of course you always look at that. And then you have Nigel, which is the end name storm that replaces Nate from 6 years ago.
So these are going to be the systems that we're watching for. And of course, we're going to be talking about this really all day long. We're going to talk about climate change here in the 8 a.m. hour. And we're just going to be getting folks ready because, as Anthony said, it can really take a short amount of time with these systems that form in the Gulf.